subscribe to my channel, which there's not a lot of you, and that's okay. Like I said, I'm just doing this to be able to give back to people that have helped me through a lot of stuff. Yeah, I've got projects from Volkswagen to I'm working on my Honda Odyssey. I'll have a video coming out with that. For my Escalade to my Land Cruiser. I mean, there's just never ending projects. So when I can't find something on YouTube, I try to put something up to be able to help people out. Today I'm working on my 07 Grizzly 700, and my son came back from riding and he said, hey, I think the fluid leaking from the back of it, and like the rear differential like puked out all over the place. So the front pinion seal went out on it, and I didn't find any real videos on this 700 in 07 for changing out that pinion seal, so I just thought I'd throw up a few tips and tricks. That's not too bad of a project and something you get taken care of. So I'll show you a little bit more. Hey everybody, as I mentioned in my intro in the video, this is for really changing out the rear pinion seal on a 2007 Yamaha Grizzly. And in the video I end up actually removing the whole rear differential, primarily because I thought there was a bearing that was going bad, and the rear differential ended up not being, it was just a tapered bearing. I do want to just mention that the seal can be replaced without removing the differential. It is still a pain in the butt because you got to try and pull the seal, clean it, and it's just such a tight area. It's really nice doing it on a bench because everything's open and clear, but there are a bunch of extra steps for having to pull that rear differential out to get to that point. So I do want to mention that you know, the extra stuff that I had to do didn't necessarily need to be done, but if nothing else, if you're changing out a rear differential, this video will help you as well. So just wanted to throw that out there. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. So again, this is a 07 700 fuel injected, and you can see the nice oil spot, oil slick. And when you come down here and look, you can see that the front pinion seal, it was just dripping right out of the bottom of the seal. So what we have to do is there's two bolts on the bottom of this rear differential. There's normally your ball hitch goes back here, just unbolts, 14 millimeter bolt. It just gives us a little bit more play room. And then those are 14 millimeter. So you just grab yourself a wrench and a socket. There's one bolt there, one more bolt down there, and then this whole assembly will be able to move back so that the rear drive shaft will slide off of its splines. We can remove that, get it out of the way, and then we can get access into that seal that's leaking. The front one's a little bit tighter. You're kind of better off getting just a closed-end wrench on this side because you don't have a ton of clearance up in that area there, and then you can get a socket on that side, and then this makes it easier for getting that bolt out. So the front bolt came off pretty easily, and I forgot to mention, yeah, there's a lower, this belly pan here, plastic, that you got to take off just to get access for into some of this stuff. Mine has never been on since I owned it, so it made it easier for getting access to these bolts. This bolt here wouldn't slide out. You just get a little flat bar on there, and you can take kind of the weight off of that, and then that bolt there will slide out pretty easy. So for this part, I just wrapped a rope around the differential just so I could pull backwards, and then I could pull while wiggling the differential, and that's enough to be able to get it to kind of work itself back. It's just hard to get your hands in here to try and grab it, so just throw a rope on her, pull it back. So yeah, it worked really slick. Like I said, just use that rope, just keep nice tension on it, and just wiggle it with a flat bar, and that thing will just pop straight back. And then you can see here, it disconnected our drive shaft link off there, so now we can get access in for the pinion seal. So while I was in here, I just wanted to pull off the drive shaft. So you just kind of wiggle it, pop it forward. So Just want to be careful. There is a spring on the inside of there, and there's also a small little, this little rubber gasket can fall out as well. But I just wanted to pull these out so I could clean them up and grease them as long as I've got it all apart. So it just pops off the end of the output shaft of the engine. So I was pulling this out. I'm like, man, this is really loose. And I'm like, this nut in here, I'm just not gonna be able to, I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to tear apart this whole differential because it was just spinning. Well, it wasn't tight. So I think that's part of why my seal failed. My bolt off of my pinion shaft here was loose. So this whole thing was just like wobbling like this. So I was able to hand spin the bolt. And then, so there's, you can see, there's the bolt. And there's where the seal runs on that. So we're getting closer to figuring out what happened here. Well, I was hoping this was going to be easy, but I think that pinion bearing on here is bad too, because I've just got, there's a lot of play there. I mean, I know there should be some play this way, but I don't think there should be this much play here. So, and this far in, we're just going to pull that rear differential out so then I can get in here. It's just going to make life easier for pulling off that gasket or that seal and then taking a better look at that bearing. Plus I can dump all the rusty like oil that's in this thing and just do it right. So yeah, I'm gonna pull, it's not a huge deal. I gotta pull a couple of these bolts over here and just pull this hub off enough that I can get that axle off, and then I'll have enough room to slide the whole assembly this way hopefully and pull that axle off without having to do anything on that side. So that's the plan. So I just took off the caliper. So there's this bracket up on top, two 10mm bolts, pop that off. There's two 12mm bolts, just one on top, one on bottom. Pull those two off and then the caliper slides right off. Just go ahead and set it right inside there. All right, so after taking the upper and lower bolts, those are just 14 and 7, the nuts are 17, I think. Oh boy, 15 or 17. Slide those bolts off, and then this whole assembly will come out, and then you just gotta, yeah, I'm always nervous pulling these axles off that I'm gonna end up damaging them, but you just gotta kinda, the best trick that I've found is to think like an impact. So I just do lots of shorter, fast, boom, 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 pull, 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 and then poof, it'll just kind of pop off on you. And I'll give you a chance to kind of inspect the axle as well here. So that's off. Now to the other side. All right, so again, we're trying to do this without having to tear apart the other side. And I was able to get in here, grab one side with this hand, reach in with my other hand, grab this side and hold the whole rear differential. And you have to get it up above where it mounts there. There's enough clearance in here that you can lift it up and then pull, 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 pull. And then it'll pop out. It's not gonna come all the way out, but then over here you can turn it, slide it up a little bit, and then in here you can grab this, wiggle, wiggle, because there's play in this side too. So as you're pulling it this way, that axle is at its full extension. So there's still room for it to pull this way. And so it was probably pulled out about this far. And I was able to reach in, wiggle, 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 push, and that axle popped out this side here. So in order for us to get it out, there is a few more steps. I'm gonna pull the sway bar here, which I realized that my sway bar bushings are shot too. So I'm gonna replace those at the same time. Basically means I'm gonna be going back to the parts store. I bought this rig knowing that it was very used, very abused. It doesn't have a ton of miles. It's only got like 2,500 miles, but It wasn't running well, the four-wheel drive wasn't working. For the most part, it's all been pretty simple fixes, but kind of the story of, like, when you don't take care of stuff, you gotta do the maintenance, you gotta do things to take care of these, otherwise it's gonna come back to bite you. So like, put a new seat cover on it, just all kinds of stuff. This thing was just, you can see by the plastics too, this thing was really just kind of destroyed. So kind of the deal, when you get a good deal and it needs lots of work, that just means you got to put a lot of work into it. So, but I think I got like $2,000 invested in, well, not including the tires. I got new tires for it. So not including the tires, I'm about $2,000 in on this Grizzly. So I'm still way money ahead. These things are selling for $3,000 to $4,000 right now with the shortage of everything. So, and otherwise it's been a great rig now that we're getting the bugs worked out of it. So, all right, we will continue. All right, so like any project, I did end up having to pull a tire off on this side just because I needed to be able to get access down here to pull these sway bar links off. For the sway bar, there's 2 bolts on each side of where the bushings are, and then I just pulled one of the bolts off for the sway bar links. You'll probably end up having to replace them because these things just rust in place, and then to try and get a wrench or something on them to keep them from spinning, a lot of times is next to impossible. So a lot of times you end up damaging, like I did to this boot. That one was okay, but yeah, and then you just kind of gotta wiggle an angle, and then that'll slide out. So that'll give you free access here for dropping the differential down through there. All right, got her out. Originally, I kind of had the differential oriented like this up in here, but with this here, it was hitting the gas tank. So it does come out. It's just a bunch of finagling. You got to kind of push this axle up and back out of the way. But I found if you keep it more in a vertical orientation, slide it forward, and then it'll kind of drop down, and then you can kind of rotate it this way, and then it'll come down almost vertically like this. So start this way, slide it forward, turn it, orient it this way, wiggle maneuver, and eventually it'll work itself down. So a little bit of a pain in the butt, but not too terribly bad. So I'm just gonna drop this in the parts washer, clean it up a little bit. I just thought I would include this because as a former fire marshal and firefighter, you don't want to store your sparklers next to your highly flammable parts washing solution. So I came to pull out my parts washer, and the boys had our sparklers stored next to it. So yeah, don't do sparklers next to a parts washing bin for your safety, just parts. All right, we got her on the bench. We're just starting to clean up this area, trying to keep anything from going inside of there. So just trying to get all the mud and gross stuff out of there. But again, I don't know. Well, to me, that's too much play in that bearing. The original grinding, that's just the gears engaging, because actually if I pull it up, that grinding goes away. If I let it sit down, it's just that pinion gear. So I'm just cleaning up around this edge. We're replacing this, so we're not too worried about damaging it, but we want to be careful not to damage this outer surface because we can develop a leak in there. In fact, I found a little bit of silicone in here, so I don't know if someone at some point tried to squeeze silicone in here to stop it from leaking. Who knows? Don't do dumb stuff. If you're gonna do something, do it right. And I say that, and sometimes there's dumb things that I do, but try not to do that. Don't just squeeze silicone in places. So we'll keep working at it. So for me, one of the best ways I found for pulling these seals without like digging in there and wrecking up this seal here is usually I'll try and pound down on the one side. It'll get this side to kind of lift up a little bit. And then you get a screwdriver down here underneath the seal. And I just use a little brass hammer and then just tap down on this, and then it'll pop the seal up just like that. And then it'll just keep you from mooging up the inside. But obviously you can see I'm not the first meatball that's been in here. She's been mooged up before. So I'm gonna try and clean it up as best we can, especially on the lower side. So this is the bottom of the diff. So your fluid primarily is going to be sitting, and actually it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be sitting more on the bottom side of this seal. So if you're ever going to pry, you're better off to try and do it on the higher side of the seal, just to reduce your chance of getting leaks. So there's our assembly. We'll pull that snap ring and just pop, see if we can get that bearing out of there. Take a little bit better look. Okay, well, in case you're wondering, this bolt is a 19mm. So I just got this cleaned up out of the parts washer. It still looks like a pig, but it's okay. It's not a pig, so. Got the grease and stuff out of it. I just kind of got this tightened up. It's not super tight, but just tight enough. And then I was able to inspect that. Actually, there's no play here. And they're actually roller bearings, they're not even ball bearings. So those are a pretty stout bearing assembly. So for me, it's not worth breaking seals and replacing that bearing. I would say that all is well here. We will change out this seal, clean it up as best we can, and send it. So here's the part number. For seals, sensors, things like that, I always just use Yamaha OEM stuff. For just cheesy wear items, bushings and things like that, I'll sometimes go with like Moog or some aftermarket stuff. But this kind of stuff where I really don't want it to leak, I just stick with the genuine Yamaha stuff. So sorry, it's kind of a mess here. Save your old seal, because when you get ready, we'll assembly lube on this, set it on, and then we'll set the old seal on top of it, and then we'll just use a light hammer, brass, or like a plastic hammer, and just tap around and then get that to set all the way down. Well, actually it's a taper bearing, so it comes out pretty easily. So I was able to take it out, clean it up. Everything looks good. It just drops right in there. Yeah, and we're all set to get the new, this is the correct seal for there. So I brought this one just to make sure we had the correct one to go in. So we'll get that seal back in place, get this thing back in the machine. All right, I wasn't gonna do this as a complete step-by-step just because unfortunately I don't have time, but putting it back together is just absolutely the reverse process, and actually everything has gone really well. Just re-greased these fittings where those gears on that drive shaft connect together. Basically just, again, slide the whole differential to the back. I'm sorry, so you can see, but it's out of the way. So slide the differential back, and then I put the axle on, and then slide the whole unit forward onto that front connection there. And then you'll have to kind of push forward on it while you get the bolts in, and then once the bolts are in, it's good to go. I got that axle put on while the differential was just kind of loose sitting in there. And that's pretty easy. You just got to get on the back side of it and like pull it hard towards the axle, and it'll pop right in. So yeah, so far so good. Sway bar length back in. It was actually loose, so I actually took some electrical tape, tightened that up, and all that sway bar. I was gonna put new bushings in, but the dealership didn't have any. They said, we've never changed any of those. I go, well then I'll put some tape on it and fix it myself. Because it doesn't surprise me that this rig is the first rig that's needed sway bar bushings. So, all right, we continue on. We gotta put this axle back in. I got to get the two bolts tightened up for the differential. Get the brake caliper put back in, add oil. We should be good to go.